Well, hey, Cascade Church, welcome to another Wednesday's Word. My name's Tim. I'm the pastor at Cascade Christian Reformed Church in Marysville. And every week we explore different parts of the Bible. I often use my own Bible readings as a trigger for what I want to share, both in the email that I send out with this and the resource page, but also any questions that you guys have, I would love to answer. This week, I was planning on talking about this already, and a few people mentioned it to me just as passing comments, that as we go through the Bible, you see different Gospels. The Gospels are 4 different letters or books written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are very similar. They're called the Synoptic Gospels. Chances are that Mark came first and that Matthew and Luke used that as a source book. Luke even says that he went and investigated the matter thoroughly. He looked at source material. He was putting together a careful investigation. Mark was more than likely the disciple of Peter, who followed him around, heard a lot of these things firsthand from Peter. Matthew is one of the apostles, one of the disciples, the former tax collector, took Mark's and Peter's notes and added to them. Luke, as a historian, took all that with other material. And then John, who came much later, was one of the apostles, and with reflection, began to add in other things. I remember when I was in college, we had to do a seminary class or a Bible seminar where we took all the different resurrection and crucifixion accounts and tried to put them together into one and show how some people leave out certain things and so other gospels have others. And people in the class began to get confused. Is the Bible not true? The stories don't line up the same. Well, as an example, imagine if Matthew, Mark, and Luke were Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN, and all of them are reporting on different things. Now, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that they're all telling the truth, on which might not be true with those 3 news networks, but for our analogy, let's use that example. Would you expect every one of them to say the same thing? So let's just say that a Chinese-born American immigrant won a gold medal in the Olympics. They would have very different takes on that. One might talk about how America was a great place to be born in. The other might talk about how the voice of a Chinese immigrant is so important and the passion around immigration. Others might just talk about the history of the Olympics. We would expect that all 3 news networks would have a very different perspective. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John all have different voices. And so while they're telling the same story, they're also telling it from their own perspective. Now, that doesn't mean it's not true. And sometimes they highlight different things. And do that around your own family. Take the same meal and talk about it a day later and ask, what was important to you about that meal? And you'll have different things. Last night was Erica's and I anniversary. She got me this wonderful shirt declaring to the world that I'm her trophy husband. I got her some jewelry. We had a great time, cupcakes. And if you took the 4 of us who were around the table and asked us what really stood out, different things would. To me, Erica's card meant the most. To Addie, the 11-year-old, probably the most important part was the cupcake she got. Maybe to Ash, it was something else. To Erica, maybe it was the jewelry. Maybe it was the fact that I ran and got her favorite cupcake from the store. Maybe it was just anything else could have happened that would stand out to her. So the exact same fact, and we remember and we highlight different things. So as you go through Matthew, Mark, and Luke especially, don't get caught up on what they're called apparent contradictions, the places where it says that Jesus was mocked this time but not that time, or in one place it talks about 1 leper being healed, another place 10 lepers being healed. If 1 leper's healed, it doesn't mean that there wasn't 9 others who were also healed. It means that they're really zooming in and saying, hey, look at Jesus' interaction with this one person. What can you learn from that? Not look at Jesus with this crowd. You look at me on a Sunday, you could take a whole Sunday and boil it down to me and Alice Cass playing. And lots of other things happen, but to one perspective, the most important thing that happened is me and a little kid, after most people were leaving, began to run around the back of the church like we were riding horses. To someone else, it might be that you were on the sermon platform preaching from the Gospel of Matthew. All very true things. And the reason I bring this up is we live in a world that seems to have a vested interest, and because Satan is still out there live and well, even though he's been defeated by Christ, he's trying to get us to doubt. And one of the ways he'll see doubt is to take God's very word and say, well, look it, even the Bible doesn't have its act together. To my opinion, the fact that the Bible shares these different perspectives helps understand it. In the video I send out with this, the email I sent out with this, there's a video by J. Werner Wallace. He was a detective who worked on cold cases. He knows what it's like to go to a crime scene and hear everybody share different things. And in the video, he talks about, imagine you interview the first witness and they say, he was a white guy and he was screaming and crazy and it was scary. Another guy came up like, yeah, he was white and he demanded money. Someone else came up and said, he told us that he'd kill us if we didn't do what he wanted, and he had dirty hair. They're all explaining what he looked like than what he said, but different perspectives. And then imagine a fourth witness hears all that and then says, well, I have information they didn't share, that he was a regular customer at the store and he drove away in a white van. Now, that might seem like, well, you're just making that up. No, all of them had different perspectives on the same fact. And then the last guy was sharing some of the context that maybe got left out with the other things. A lot of times, that's what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John feel like. You take the washing of the feet, you don't get that Matthew, Mark, and Luke. You get the institution of the Lord's Supper, which is probably the more important thing. But John, knowing that those other Gospels were around, said, you know what, those stories have been told. He includes that. But here's something else that they didn't include that was so important to me. And so as you listen to the Gospels, as you read the Gospels, keep that in mind. If you run into these apparent contradictions that begin to throw you for a loop, feel free to reach out to help. I can help you. There's a million resources online and books that you can look at. But the other thing that helps me as I read these different voices is in the church, we have different voices. In our own church, we have so many different voices. People have experienced, people have been through pain, people have been through cancer, divorce, the death of a spouse. All of your voices will begin to describe God in slightly different ways, the same God, by the way he's impacted you. Then you look around at the global church with different races, different backgrounds, different economic systems. I heard an interview earlier today where a pastor used to go to Cuba, and he was talking to a Cuban pastor and saying, I've been praying for you that there wouldn't be so much persecution under communism. And the guy said, don't pray that for us. We're flourishing. In fact, we're praying that America has persecution because your church is dying. You guys are so comfortable. Very different perspectives. And we need all those perspectives in the church. And so this week, remember that God is real. Remember that he's given you a voice. Remember that the Bible is a different book telling one story about who God is. And it's there so that the Holy Spirit can use the Bible to take your voice and to share God's truth with your friends. So as you go, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'd love to answer them for you. If not, I will talk to you next week. God bless.